Hey guys, I pulled out, this is part 3 of installing an oil pressure gauge and a water temperature gauge in my Mini Cooper. I pulled out my tach because I want to do some wiring up to it. So basically, to pull out the tach, it's easy. You drop the tilt on your steering wheel and take out the two torque screws on top. So I was able to do a test run and wire it up. You see there, I powered it up with 12 volts, so all the different wiring here. And actually I have a potentiometer here, so when I change it, which simulates a change in pressure, you see it goes up and down. So one of the things I did is I want to incorporate it allows you to program highs and lows, so it gives you a warning. So the front of it will flash. You see this right here? And I incorporate LEDs up in here because it's not actually, my car doesn't use the LEDs there. So when the pressure drops too low or too high, it would actually do that. And I incorporate a dimmer switch, which is right here. I have a dimmer switch. And I could actually change it between amber and white by switching between or turning it off. So let me show you that. So right now it's on amber. So I could turn it off or change it to white. And I could change the dim on here a little bit. Let me go back to amber. I can actually dim it down. So let me show you what I did in wiring from the sheet that they give, the information sheet they give you. So this is the water temperature gauge. So on the back, they both look identical. You'll have 4 connectors in the back, and let me show you what those 4 is using the instruction sheet. So here's the instruction sheet. So connector 1, basically that's where I was able to hook up gives you a 12 volt output warning, so it drives 12 volts, I think half an amp to any light or anything you want to do. So that's what I hooked up to some LEDs on the top of my tach. This is your menu. Connector 2 is your menu, so it allows you to set the highs and lows on your gauge. Then you have connector 3, which actually is you only use pin 3, which gives you the signal that's coming off your sensor. Then connector 4 is all your other ones. It has your white and orange. You could do either one, but I put a switch so you could pick between the two. And your red, that's going to only be powered when you turn on your accessories. And then you need a 12 volt here that's always on, and your ground. Then you need to fuse these 2 powers here. And I did they recommend a 1 amp fuse. And I made some wiring harnesses for all these different cables. So let me show you what I did for connector 1 to power the LEDs. Okay, this is my diagram that I'm going to use. So this is the connector 1 on both of them. So basically what I had to do was to get let's say I had a little LED strip here, and then you have your plus and minus, which runs off 12 volts like that. So basically you want to, this is red and this is red, so you would normally just go ahead and just drive it like that. But since I'm using 2 of them, that way if either one of them has puts out a warning, you want it to light it up. So if I did that, then that means this 12 volts will run back into this one. So what you do is you go ahead and put a diode in there, and then you put a diode, this one, and I think I just used the common one, which is the 1N 4001 series diode. So this way it only goes in one direction and doesn't feed back in. And this is black, which goes to ground. So basically that's how that works. And then the other thing for the switch, the menu switch, normally they give you for this connector 2, they give you little push button switch, momentary switch to change the menu. But I didn't like that because I didn't want to drill a hole in the dash and mount these button switches in there. So instead, on the back plate of the mounting for the gauge, I went ahead and used that plate and mounted a momentary switch like this, and glued it on the back side, and went ahead and ran the wires. So that means I made one for each of these to go to connector 2, one for the water and one for the oil and water gauge, and that's how that works. For the LEDs, basically you just need 12 volt LEDs. I had to buy a big spool of it. Here's a big spool, 16 feet. Comes in a big spool like this, a whole bunch of little LEDs. And it shows you where you're allowed to cut. I only used up 3 lights on it, and I'll show you that on the tach, how I mounted that in there. So to get inside your tachometer, all you have to do is take out the 3 screws on the back. You have to actually do this in the car because you'll still have the cable running into it. Then once you're able to take off the back, you just undo the connector here, which allows you to remove the whole tachometer from the car. So basically I was able to pull this out by just pull these 4 clips, the black ones here, all the way around the side. Then you can take the whole unit out, and then I was able to run the LEDs in here around, see the red wire around that side, and run it back out. So that way then it splits off to both gauges. So here's the wire coming out, and it splits off to the 2 gauges, plus there's diodes that I showed in the diagram that goes to both of those. So this is the box I made to hold the LED dimmer and the amber and white light. So basically I just mounted it in a small box. So there's inside the box, and there's the wiring coming out that goes to different places. So let me show you what I did for that, basically, for so that way I can switch between amber and white and hook up the dimmer. Okay, see if I could do this one-handed. So basically it's this connector 4 that you're going to do that with, and basically the white and orange light that decides the color of your gauge are 2 and 4. You got 2 and 4. This would be orange, and this would be white. The same thing with this one, 2 and 4. White, orange. So be able to switch between the 2. Basically what I did was that's going to run to a 12 volt dash light, and they say I could find that light underneath the console where the where the lighter is, not the lighter, the 12 volt cigarette lighter is. So basically I'm gonna run that up, then that's where I put the switch. So it's either switches between white or orange, And then this one, the other gauge goes to this white one, and this one goes to this orange. So basically with the 12 volts, I can switch between this one, and that way they're both either white or they're both basically orange. And that's that switch I have in there. Okay, for the dimmer, that comes off connector 4, 2. So basically for the dimmer, that's off of 5, which is going to be a red. And that has to be hooked up to a 1 amp fuse. So basically I went ahead and just tied the two. This is probably not going to be more than 1 amp. So then I have a fuse, 1 amp fuse, fast blow fuse. Then that goes to your dimmer. And this, and coming off the dimmer, that's a yellow here. And then you need your red, which goes to the 12 volt accessories. And that you'll find at the cigarette lighter too. And a black, which is ground. And that you'll find at the cigarette lighter too, which is ground. So basically you gotta get a special dimmer that goes with that. And it's not just any dimmer. It has to be able to work with LEDs. So I was able to get it off of Summit. So this is the dimmer, which is model 9235. It works with an LED dimmer module. And that's, so basically it's this one right here with the Marshall gauges. It works with the stepper motor gauge, basically. So the last connector, the last wire I have is still off of connector 4, which is this one, which is the purple one. And that needs 12 volts all the time. So it needs plus 12 volts all the time, which is basically battery. And that has to be fused too. So I put a 1 amp fuse there after I tied. So I made a wire harness for this whole, for this one. Then I made a wire harness to this one that runs to the sensor. That's where this one goes. Then there's this one, which is a sensor. Then these are the button ones. And that's this thing here. They have their separate ones. And then these two are tied together with the diode to the LED. So that's all the wiring harness I made. So basically those, go ahead and put them in the car and assemble it. Go to the car and start putting things in. Okay, here's all the stuff. I got my cable, which splits off, that has the dimmer and the switch. Then I have the connector 4, which a lot of those wires connect together, then split off again. And then I have my 2 sensor wires, which are separate. And I kept the color code like in what I had in part 2. I got a white, which goes to water, and an orange, which goes to the oil pressure. Then there's my tach with the LED connectors, my 2 gauges, the bracket. Here's my other gauge. Probably need heat gun for shrink tubing, meter, soldering. Go mount this back on, which is holds my phone, wire snips, ties. And so I think the first thing I went ahead and did is disconnected the negative on the battery. So get to the battery, open that up, use a 10 millimeter, go and loosen the top nut and take off the negative before you go ahead and do doing the electrical work. Okay guys, this is the connector that goes back onto the tach. So I'm gonna go open up the back of the tach, plug that back in, and put on the bracket with the spacers, and then start running all the wires. Okay, I have to make two longer screws than the ones that came with it. It's a little bit longer because on the back of the bracket, I'm gonna have to mount my phone holder, magnetic phone holder. So it required slightly longer brackets, which I painted black, and go ahead and put that on the back of the tach. Okay, here's my bracket installed. I got my phone mount, then the bracket for the gauges, spacers, all screwed in. So I'll go ahead and run the other cables. Okay, here's all my wires. Here's the two wires that go to the sensor, which I ran this from part 2 video. So those will connect orange to orange and white to white. And this one, the purple one I have, that runs to +12 battery all the time, and I should be able to find it somewhere up in this bunch here where the reader is, the OBD2. This is the red and black. The red goes toward 12 volts accessories and 12 volts ground, and these two are for the lights, amber and white, and that will go to my box where I could switch it, so let me go ahead and run the different wires and start crimping. Okay, the power for the 12 volts A accessories is pretty obvious. This is a connector to the cigarette lighter. So the brown wire is going to be ground. The red with the yellow stripes is going to be the 12. Now for the dash light, what they want you to do, that bundle of wire right there. So one of those wires is going to be gray with a red stripe, which is marked. I marked it with black tape here, which is this wire here, and that's going to be the dash light. That's going to go to my switch to pick between amber and white. So let me go ahead and splice those wires in to my box. Okay, here's my wires spliced into the cigarette lighter. This is red, the +12 accessories, ground, and then here's my wire that's going for the dash light, the amber or white, and let's see, and there it's spliced in right there to the gray with the red stripe. I bundled that up with some electrical tape. Then on my end of the connector here with the dimmer and the switch, I have the connectors here, so I can just plug them in. Then I just need to do the other end here, these wires. Okay guys, been doing all my wiring. Those are my wires from my console, the cigarette lighter, all the way to this box, my dimmer, and my amber white light switch. Then from the box, I have the wires running up, connecting to either the amber or white, and then the power to goes the wire harness that goes to the gauges. So that's that. So the only thing I have left is wiring up this purple one that goes to +12 always, which is, they said go with the OBD2 wire in there. So I'll show how to do that. But let me go ahead button up some of this, and wire up the last wire. Okay, for the plus 12, the purple wire, because it's a stepper gauge, I need plus 12 battery, and they can get it from the OB2 sensor, which is red with a blue stripe. I think it's that first one right here with the yellow on it too. So I'm going to tie into that to get my plus 12. Okay guys, I got the wire hooked up. This should be my plus 12 to the OBD2, and then there's my connections there and my connections there. Be able to get everything installed, tied in, hook up the negative on the battery back. So let's go ahead and stir it up and see if it works. Okay, first round it did not work right, and what I had was a bad ground. I thought that was ground. It's some kind of ground, but it's not getting a good ground. So what I did is I connected it here, and I ohmed out between here and the ground inside where the cigarette lighter is, which I got really 0.1. But when I do it to here, I get in the thousands for some reason. I don't know what that is. So I ground here for the other end of the sensors. So once I do that, and it works. So here are the gauges installed. Starts up. That's my pressure, 45-ish. Engine's not hot enough yet. It's the lowest, it says it's 110, so that's not hot enough. Need to play with my switches here. So I could turn the dimmer. Dims. And I could switch it off or turn it on to white, back and forth. So right there it seems to work. I'm gonna button everything up, take it out for a test drive, make sure the temperature is working right, and that's reading correctly. So I gotta drive it around and get the car warmed up. But go ahead and button it up and take it out for a test drive. Hey guys, so this is me test driving it. So you can see the temperatures. It climbed to like 220 until the airflow was going over the radiator. Then it dropped back down to about 50, 60, 170. Then same thing with the pressure. The pressure was low, around close to 20, but then driving it, then it bumped back up to 30. So cool little gauges from CravenSpeed. They're Marshall gauges, little kit. So I'll see how it does in the summer, but it's nice to have a temperature gauge and oil pressure gauge, knowing what's going on with your car. So sorry the video's choppy, but I had to like start and stop it, doing different things and different days. So so I hope this video is helpful, and good luck on yours. Thanks for watching.